The morning of my wedding should have been peaceful, as the sun rose over Maplewood Estates. I brewed a cup of coffee, straightened my uniform jacket carefully, hung over its wooden hanger for the ceremony later, and took a deep breath. Today wasn't just another day for me. It was the day I would marry the love of my life. Mia. The venue sat just 2 blocks from my home, a small garden space reserved for residents. Everything was set, from the flowers Mia had chosen to the string lights wrapped around the pergola. But peace was a luxury this neighborhood rarely delivered, especially with Karen living 3 houses down. Karen, the self-appointed tyrant of the HOA, lived for 2 things: enforcing rules that didn't exist and making other people miserable. She believed she ran the entire neighborhood, even though she wasn't even on the HOA board anymore. She'd been removed 2 years ago for excessive abuse of authority, but that never slowed her crusade. So when I saw her storming down the sidewalk that morning with a folder of papers clutched to her chest, I knew trouble was brewing. She stopped at the garden gate, scanned the floral arch that we'd decorated the night before, and marched straight up to the small gathering of workers who were setting up chairs. "This is not approved," she barked, waving a stack of papers that looked like they'd been printed from a random HOA rulebook she found on Pinterest. "This entire setup violates community quiet hours, lawn protection regulations, and pedestrian flow. You can't hold this wedding here." Luis, our decorator, looked at her with the kind of confusion only Karen could provoke. "Ma'am, we have written approval from the HOA board." Karen scoffed. "Fake. Completely fake. I know every rule here. I wrote half of them." She hadn't. I walked over, hands in pockets, trying to avoid escalating anything before noon. "Morning, Karen." She spun toward me like she'd been waiting for the perfect target. "Chief Davis, you should be stopping this. There are violations everywhere." "Karen," I said calmly, "everything is approved." I checked it myself. That set her off. "You don't get to make decisions just because you're the police chief. This is my neighborhood, and if you don't stop this illegal event, I will." I opened my mouth to reply, but she had already pulled out her phone. "Fine," she spat. "Then I'm calling 911. I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, you know I run the department, right?" Her eyes narrowed. "Then maybe someone above you will handle this properly." And with that, she dialed. At that moment, I knew the day was about to take a dramatic turn, one she would seriously regret. Karen didn't just dial 911. She stabbed the numbers like she was detonating a bomb. She marched in circles as the call connected, glancing at me every few seconds with a smug expression, as if she were about to unleash divine punishment. I folded my arms and waited. I had no intention of stopping her. If she wanted to embarrass herself, I wasn't going to interfere. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher answered. Karen immediately went full dramatic. "Yes, I need officers here immediately," she snapped. "There's an illegal gathering happening in the Maplewood Community Garden. There are loud noises, unauthorized decorations, and at least 20 people assembling without approval." The dispatcher replied calmly, "Ma'am, can you confirm if there's any danger or violence?" Karen paused, thrown off by the question. "Danger? Well, it's dangerous for the community rules." I pressed my lips together to hold back a laugh. The dispatcher, still following protocol, asked, "Is anyone being threatened or harmed?" "Yes, I feel threatened. They're ignoring my authority." I couldn't help myself. "Karen, you don't have authority," I said quietly. She swung her finger toward me and hissed, "Stay out of this." The dispatcher asked, "Ma'am, what is your exact location?" Karen gave the address, then added dramatically, "Tell the officers to hurry. They'll need to shut this down before it gets out of control." The dispatcher paused. Then came the line I knew was coming. "Ma'am, I have a note here that the police chief, Chief Davis, is overseeing an approved wedding event at that location today. Are you referring to that?" Karen froze mid-stride. Her face drained of color. "No," she barked. "This is not approved. Whoever wrote that note is lying. That note is part of the official event log," the dispatcher replied. I cleared my throat. "Karen, she's talking about me." Karen shot me a look of pure frustration. She knew, for the first time in a long while, she had miscalculated. But she continued anyway. "I want officers sent," she insisted. I demanded. The dispatcher, following procedure, said, "Units will be notified." And that was that. Karen hung up and gave me a triumphant smirk, completely unaware of what came next. Because in less than 5 minutes, two patrol cars rolled into the cul-de-sac. Officers Martinez and Holloway stepped out, confused, looking around the peaceful garden setup like someone had pranked them. Karen strutted toward them like she had called in a SWAT team. "Officers, shut this wedding down immediately," she ordered. "This event is illegal." Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am?" Luis waved sheepishly from behind the arch. Karen's voice cracked. He's misusing authority. He's. Martinez cut her off. "Ma'am, false emergency calls are a chargeable offense." Karen went still. Absolutely still. This was the moment she realized she had crossed a line. And the day was only getting started. Karen stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a stunned goldfish. The officers waited patiently, their hands resting casually on their duty belts, not because they felt threatened, but because they were trying not to laugh. This wasn't an emergency call. This was a comedy show. I didn't mean it like that," Karen finally sputtered. "I was only trying to protect the neighborhood." Martinez pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am, you reported an illegal, dangerous gathering. But all we see is a scheduled, peaceful wedding event with the chief of police present." Karen shook her head so violently her dangling earrings nearly launched into orbit. "You don't understand. These lights, these chairs, this arch, they're not approved. They're damaging the community lawn." Holloway glanced at the grass. "Ma'am, it's literally artificial turf." Karen blinked. "It is." "Yes." I sighed. "It has been for 2 years." Her face flushed bright red. Still, she dug her heels in. "Okay, fine. But these people don't have a permit to gather here." I gestured toward the official document pinned to a clipboard near the entrance. Large, laminated, with bold lettering. "You mean this?" I asked. She marched over, squinting at it. She waited, then squinted harder, then gasped. Her eyes darted across the embossing, the HOA board signatures, and, worst of all for her pride, her replacement's name stamped at the bottom. The very board member who had voted her out after her infamous pool float inspection incident. "No," she whispered. "This can't be valid." Martinez held out a pen. "Ma'am, we need a statement. You knowingly placed a false emergency call." Karen stiffened. "Knowingly? Absolutely not. I called because I was misled. I thought." She pointed at me. "He tricked me." I raised an eyebrow. "By having a wedding on my scheduled wedding day." She stomped her foot. "You know what I mean." Holloway crossed his arms. "Ma'am, we have the call recording. You claimed there were dangerous individuals gathering. That's a misuse of emergency services. And a reportable violation," Martinez added. "This can't be ignored." For once, Karen's voice softened to something almost human. "Please, I didn't mean for it to go this far." But before I could say anything, a slow parade of my guests began arriving, my cousins, Mia's friends, and neighbors who actually liked us. Every single one of them stared at Karen like she was the pre-wedding entertainment. Mia walked up next, stunning in a simple white dress for the rehearsal. She looked at Karen with a mixture of pity and disbelief. I exhaled. She called 911 on our wedding. Mia blinked once. Twice. Of course she did. With the officers, the guests, and an entire neighborhood witnessing her meltdown. Karen's bravado finally crumbled. "Chief," Martinez asked quietly, "would you like to press charges?" Everyone looked at me. Karen gulped. The power was suddenly in my hands, but the day wasn't over yet. The moment Martinez asked whether I wanted to press charges, the neighborhood went silent. Even the birds seemed to pause mid-chirp. Karen stood there shrinking into herself, hands trembling, eyes darting between me, the officers, and the gathering crowd. This wasn't the attention she loved. This was accountability, and Karen had never faced it head-on. I took a deep breath. It was my wedding day. The last thing I wanted was paperwork, hearings, and legal drama. Not today, I said finally. This day is supposed to be about love, not lawsuits. Karen exhaled in visible relief, but I wasn't finished. However, I continued, you will apologize. Not to me, this is my job, but to Mia, my guests, and everyone here who had their morning disrupted. Karen stiffened as if I had asked her to walk barefoot across burning coals. But Martinez stepped forward, nodding in support. It's a fair request, he said firmly. Apologies go a long way. Karen's jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought she'd refuse. Then she turned reluctantly toward Mia, avoiding eye contact. I apologize, she muttered. Mia folded her arms. Louder, Karen. People in the back can't hear you. Karen winced. I'm sorry, she said louder this time. I shouldn't have called 911. The guests nodded in approval. Someone even clapped sarcastically. But Mia wasn't done. And, she prompted. Karen swallowed hard. And, I overreacted. I was wrong. A small chorus of "you think" rose from the back row. Karen shot them a glare, but she kept herself contained. Finally, she turned to leave, humiliated, but Holloway stepped in front of her. Ma'am, one more thing, he said, holding out a bright yellow slip. This is a formal warning for improper use of emergency services. It will remain on file. Karen stared at it like it was a death sentence. But she took it, nodded stiffly, and speed walked away, nearly tripping over a decorative lantern. As she disappeared into her house, the energy in the garden shifted instantly. The tension evaporated, replaced by laughter, relieved smiles, and the hum of celebration. Mia slipped her arm through mine. Crisis averted. Every wedding needs a little drama, I said. Ours just happened early. The ceremony began shortly afterward. The sun filtered through the leaves, the music played softly, and our guests gathered with hearts lighter than before. As I stood under the floral arch, the same one Karen had nearly waged war over, I watched. Mia walked down the aisle, glowing. Everything slowed. Everything softened. And for that moment, nothing else mattered. When we exchanged vows, even the officers stayed to applaud. When we kissed, the neighborhood cheered. I laughed. Let's not make it a tradition. Behind us, Karen's curtains twitched. She was watching, of course she was. But for once, she stayed silent. Our wedding carried on, joyous and unstoppable. Because no matter how hard Karen tried, you can't stop love, not even with a 911 call.